Veronica's debut novel is The Whispering, and it's brilliant. I could not put it down. Veronica won the Banjo Prize for Fiction and has done many, many courses at the Australian Writers' Centre, and I know she is going to be a mainstay on the literary landscape for the years to come. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Valerie. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to talk all things writing and all things the whispering.
I am so excited too because your book is absolutely fantastic, The Whispering. And oh my goodness, this is your debut novel. I have to say, it doesn't read like a debut novel. It reads like you have been writing for a very long time. It's fantastic. So let's start with, for people who haven't got a copy yet, what is it about?
Yeah, so the Whispering is at its heart an Australian mystery. It follows our main character, Callum, as 30 years after a life-shattering accident, he returns to his hometown in Far North Queensland to aid in the search of a local band that's gone missing in the rainforest. And it's not too long after Callum's feet hit the ground that he begins to suspect foul play. And as he goes searching for answers, he starts to uncover the truth about what happened to two girls that also went missing in the rainforest later. As the story progresses, Callum has to fight quite hard to keep his feet firmly on the rainforest trail. Starts whispering, trying to lure him astray. And everyone in this town in North Queensland knows that the worst things in the rainforest are those unseen.
Now, I think what I find fascinating is that I know that the idea for this came to you while you were having a massage. Can you just tell us a bit more about that? I don't really understand how that has happened.
I don't know. Inspiration just strikes whatever, I guess. So, yeah, I knew that I had wanted to write for quite a while at that stage. And I'm not sure, I was just obviously very relaxed, or my mind was just wandering. But I got that initial spark, which was real. It was just a question, like a little tiny kernel of an idea, but that came to me during a massage. So as soon as the massage was over, I rushed out to my car and opened the notes section on my phone and just jotted down a few sentences that came to mind. And then I sort of let that sit and brew for quite a few months before I actually started tackling the project. But it came during massage. I don't know why.
But what was the question that came to you in the massage?
Oh, it might actually be a little bit of a spoiler. It was sort of...
Oh, okay. Let's not discuss it then.
Yeah, sort of a what would happen if this was the scenario, how would that play out? But I think someone else had asked me, and I think it's quite a big spoiler.
Oh, yes. We don't like spoilers here. Okay, so to give people some context, this is your first novel. Tell us what you have done in your career till now.
So I have nothing to do with writing in my career. I come from a background in health. I'm a physio. So I was just working part-time in private practice, sort of that, person that you come and see when you've got your sore neck from writing too much, or your sore back, or hurt your knee running. And so it was very different. But I've always erred towards creative pursuits for hobbies. So I quite like painting and a few other bits and bobs. And I just thought that, writing was something, it hadn't always been on my radar, but I've always been an enthusiastic reader, like all writers. And I just sort of just came to it one night, and I haven't been able to turn away from it. But my background's definitely not in writing, so I had to very much learn how to write.
So you've actually done quite a few courses at the Australian Writers' Centre as well. And one of them was Novel Writing Essentials. What did you get out of those courses that was useful to writing your novel?
Yeah, I've lost track of the number of courses I've done. I think I've done like maybe 8 or something like that. Like, it's a huge number of courses. I think I did them within like 2 years, so within a fairly short period of time. But they basically taught me everything from how to plot, how to do dialogue fairly well. I also took some of the courses just on really basic writing things because, as I said, also the fundamentals of writing and writing, right? Like the grammar course for fiction. It really gained me confidence in my writing. And one of the things I loved about that course that you mentioned, the Novel Writing Essentials, was that I actually got to submit some of my pieces. And I had the lovely Bernadette Foley as my convener at the time, and chief editor. And it's just fabulous to have an editor look at your work because, well, no one had looked at it. It's just, with me sort of writing and not really getting any feedback from knowing how I was going. So she gave me a few tips and a few areas that I needed to work on. And then I was able to carry that through the rest of the manuscript. So that was just fabulous. And with that course as well, you're with a group of other like-minded writers trying to start their journey for writing a novel. So you're all starting at the start, really. Most people haven't really written much at all of that novel that they're working on. And then, you have this goal of reaching X number of words by the end of the course. And that was in such a supportive environment.
Oh, wonderful. So I understand that you are quite a planner, and that when you got the idea for this novel, you pretty much planned it out first before you started writing. You said that you thought about it for a few months. So can you take us through that process? What happened during those few months for you to flesh out, I understand, the entire story? And how did you physically plan it out, like on Post-it notes, in Word, in what?
Yeah, so I had had a few failed attempts at writing some novels prior. So I think I'd had 3 attempts where I pulled up something around the 20,000 word mark. And I hadn't planned a lot of those ones. I just sort of written into the void. And I'd always, sort of got to that 20,000 word mark. I'm not really knowing what I was doing and story I wanted to tell. And so after listening to all the interviews of some of my favorite authors, I'd heard a few of them were plotters. And so I thought, right, I'm going to plot the next one and see if that gets me beyond that sort of 20,000 word mark. And so I got this idea, as we said, and then I let it sit for a few months. And the reason I let it sit for a few months is because I'd heard some people comment that, some authors say that they like to let their ideas sort of just mull over in their sort of subconscious. And I was also working on some short stories at the time that I was wanting to submit into a competition. So I wanted to finish those stories off and give them some justice before I dove in. So it was 2 or 3 months maybe where I didn't, but I was still writing, just writing something else. And I spent a month planning it. So I actually can't remember if I planned it in Word or how I did it. I think I might have just done a bit of a table and sort of plot points, like the first turning point, second turning point, inciting incident, midpoint, those sorts of things in there. I've since progressed to Scrivener, so I plan things in there. I find that a lot brilliant, so I can move things around more easily. But I spent about a month planning it, and I broke the month down into sort of sections. So I was like, I'm going to spend a week coming up with the setting and sort of really thinking about the way the town is laid out and doing some research on the rainforest. At the time I was living in Brisbane, though I had visited the rainforest quite a lot. We had previously lived in Cairns, but I was doing a lot of looking at images online and writing down different flora, tips about flora and fauna, and thinking about so it's trying to bring the scenery to life. So I divided it up into, I was going to have a week for scenery and a week for a week or 2 for characters maybe, and then another week for plot points, and sort of broke it down a little bit like that so I could chip away at it with the view that at the end of the month I would start writing. And that's what I did. I then, at the end of the month of September, I planned it, and then on the 1st of October, I started writing. And I think the novel writing essential course started on the 5th of October, so it's perfect timing. It's married beautifully. Then I just thought it was a bit of a whirlwind. I just sort of stashed out in a couple of months and kind of done before Christmas.
Wow. Okay. Just let's circle back to you. You decided on the plot points. When you planned it out, was it more broad, like, your inciting incident, your first turning point, your second turning point, and so on? Or did you go scene by scene planning?
Oh, I went scene by scene. So I started very broad, and I do that now. I'm writing my second novel, and I'm doing the same. I started off with, this is the exciting incident, the hook that's going to get people in sort of chapter 1, so to speak, and then this is what's going to happen at sort of around maybe the 10% mark that's going to keep readers going, and then this is the first turning point. And I went through like that, and I came up with those major points first, and then I went back and went, okay, so how are we going to get from plot point A to plot point B, and what scenes need to happen? What sort of 4 or 5 scenes or chapters need to happen in that section there. And so then I would fill that in. Chapter by chapter breakdown. And it wasn't break detail, like sentence for each chapter. And at least when I went to write the first draft, I didn't have huge amounts of writer's block or staring at the blank screen, because I would know what each scene had to entail.
Wow. Okay. So with scene by scene planning, and you can't remember whether you did it in Word or whatever, but now you presumably you put a little Scrivener index card for each
Yes. Yep.
scene, right? So, okay. That is so systematic. That's fantastic. I just love the rigor behind that. Now, when you were determining the scenes, what was going to happen, what was going to take you from the plot point A to plot point B, did that flow? I mean, or did you have to spend lots of time walking in the wilderness and deciding what was going to happen, how it was going to unfold, how it was all going to play out?
It didn't always flow, no. I wish I could say it did, but I think I'd be lying if I said that it just sort of flowed out beautifully. No, there were definitely times where I was playing around with it and I'd be stuck and not sure how we should get from A to B. And certainly what I did write in that first draft, it changed. Like I've sort of veered off the track sometimes here and there of the initial plan. But it wasn't always breezy doing the plotting. And I have to say now, especially now that I've gone, I think my favourite part of the start, but because I had the failed attempts earlier of trying to write novels and just not getting anywhere, I think that plotting is probably the best option for me. But I don't especially enjoy it.
Okay, so now this is not a spoiler, but in terms of scene by scene, there are some scenes which are set in the past, and they're told from one of the characters' point of view, and they're set when they're much younger. Did you also plot that in a linear fashion, or did you have some kind of parallel timeline and then you inserted them?
Yeah, I think originally I did them parallel. So I had the main story with all its major plot points, and then I had this story of the main character when he's a teenager and had his plot points from when he was a teenager. So if you read, there's only a handful of chapters from when he was a teenager, but if you look at those chapters, you'll be able to see that they sort of mirror the plot points in the main story thread as well. So there's sort of a midpoint reversal when he's a teenager as well as when he's an adult, and there's a sort of a climax as a teenager and an adult. So I very much I did them separately. And then I slotted them in. And when I actually wrote the first draft, I wrote the whole thing from start to finish. So I'd write maybe 5 scenes of the main character as an adult, and then I'd write a scene of him as a teenager, and then another sort of half dozen scenes, an adult and back to a teenager, and went through it that way. So I wrote the book really from chapter 1 all the way through to chapter 40 or whatever it is.
Right. So you planned it in parallel, but you wrote it in a linear fashion.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, right. Fascinating. Okay. So tell me about, you then you write it and you enter the Banjo Prize. Tell me about the thought of why you entered the Banjo Prize and what you did when you heard that you won.
Yeah, so it was I entered the Banjo Prize at the 11th hour. It was on my radar. I was aware of the unpublished manuscript competitions that were going on for the year, and the Banjo is one that was, it's very enticing. It gives you a publishing deal, and that's fantastic and not often offered. And so it was very much on my radar, but by the time the entries were open, I had only completed my second draft. And so I had thought it wasn't really up to scratch. So previously when I'd written short stories and they had done well in competitions, I'd always written sort of 6, 7 or 8 drafts of them. And so that's what I was prepared to do with the novel, to write them before I went approaching agents and publishers. And so I ended up entering it purely because I was listening to a podcast episode with Catherine Milne, who's one of the HarperCollins publishers, and she was speaking the Banjo, and the podcast dropped only a couple of days before the Banjo closed. And she said, look, it closes in a few days. If anyone who's got a manuscript in their proverbial bottom drawer, send it our way. We've got nothing to lose, and everything. Right. By the end of that podcast episode, I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I've got absolutely nothing to lose, potentially everything to gain. So I spent a couple of days, sometimes, but I just formatted it, did a quick read through, so I did the spell check with it, and tried to tidy it up as much as I could. And I entered it the day before it closed at like 11 p.m. at night. And the next day, I think it closed at 5 p.m., but I hadn't been able to work on it that day. So I knew that was my last minute to enter it. Yeah, and then here we are. So,
Oh my goodness. So what can you remember what you were doing when they told you or when you found out?
yeah. So I remember both getting the phone call for being told that I was on the shortlist and also being told that I won it. But to be honest, the being told that I was on the shortlist was the one that really stands out in terms of like the emotional experience, because they get quite a few entries, and to be one of 4 that gets shortlisted is incredible. And so I was with my family. We had just moved from Brisbane to Townsville, and we'd been doing a holiday in Cairns. And it was the day that we were driving back from Cairns to Townsville, which is about a 5-hour drive. And we stopped at night, some treats for the kids. And I just thought, I should listen to that voicemail as I was walking back to the car park. So I had to listen to it, and it was Anna Baldinger, who's my publisher. And she was absolutely delightful. It's the best voicemail I've ever received. She was gushing over the story and saying how much they loved it. And I had, up until that point, never really had anyone tell me how good my writing was. And so it was just so exciting. And I don't know, I must have been jumping around the car park or something. They stopped and asked me if I just won the lotto. And when I tried to explain to her that, no, I wrote a book and a publisher liked it and, wants to make me publish it, she just didn't quite get it and felt a bit short for her, I think. Yeah, so it was very exciting. And then, of course, my family came over, and I had to explain it all to them because, well, my husband knew I had written a book. He didn't know I had entered into a competition. So sort of,
oh my God. Wow.
It was very exciting. Made the rest of the journey in the cart very exciting.
I bet. What fantastic news. And, now it's out and it's just absolutely fantastic. And other people are realizing how brilliant it is. So now that, and I have no doubt this is going to be a huge success. Now though, is this your thing now? Are you writing your second novel and are you still being a physio?
Well, I'm actually not physioing at the moment, but that's because I have a 4-month-old child. So I'm sort of in that, that maternity leave stage anyway. And so I'm on sort of maternity leave with her. And in that time, though, I am writing. So I'm currently writing a second novel at the moment. And I'm, in the ideal world, this would be my thing and I would have to go back to work. But I did. I'll probably have to go back maybe next year or the year after and get back into physio part-time at least. But it would be nice to at least be able to write part-time. But I mean, with the dream be to do it full-time. So we'll see.
Of course. So is your second novel in a similar genre? And have you gone through the heavy-duty plotting process for it already as well?
Yes, I have. Yep. And a little bit like pulling teeth, trying to push. It felt like it was very different to, I'd obviously just come out of the editorial phase for The Whispering and then started trying to plot this second novel. And I feel like they're 2 different stages. And so it was quite tricky to get back into it. And so this second book is very much in a similar vein to the first book. So anybody that enjoys The Whispering will enjoy the second book. So it's a crime story. It's set again up in Farnborough, Queensland, but not in a rainforest setting. It's a very different sort of backdrop. And it's got that sort of otherworldly feel to it as well, like The Whispering does. So I think if you've enjoyed the first book, then you should enjoy the second book.
This is so exciting. So just take me back though, when you are in the midst of the writing. So I don't know, are you in the midst of the writing the second novel now?
Yeah, I'm at the tail end of the first draft now.
Okay, so when you were writing the first draft, and the question is also, I guess, for when you were writing the first draft of The Whispering, what was the process? You've already got a whole lot of scene-by-scene breakdowns. Do you go, I'm going to write 2 scenes today, or I'm going to write however many scenes today? How does that work?
Yeah, so I set myself a deadline. I wanted to finish it before Christmas. And I started writing 1st of October, and we were going away for Christmas. And I didn't want to take the writing commute. And I knew that I didn't want to be one of these people that was going to take years and years and years to write my first draft. I knew I just wanted to be like, if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it and get it done quite quickly. So in order to get it done by Christmas, I told myself I was going to write every single day. and that was going to write 1,000 words a day. And I thought if I did that, that I would pretty quickly have sort of an 80 or 90,000 word manuscript. So that's exactly what I did. I think in the weeks between 1st of October and Christmas, I had, I think, 3 days off, but they were 3 planned days off. I knew I had work commitments and a family commitment on one of the days, so I knew in advance that I would write on those days. And I just made sure that I wrote them. And so I actually wrote it when I wasn't working then either, because I was on maternity leave with my second child. So I just had baby number 3. And so I was very much just writing in the evenings for the most part. So once my 2 kids were asleep, sort of from 8 p.m. onwards, I would just myself at the dining table and type away.
Until what time?
It's probably 10 or so. I sort of wrote ever for longer than 2 hours at a time. And I think because I had plotted it that I was able to sort of do that 1,000 words within that time frame. I don't think I would have been able to stay awake past 10 o'clock with having 2 young kids.
That is brilliant. So, I mean, it does save an incredible amount of time when you already know what's happening. So that's great. And you were just really disciplined. Now, apart from your 3 days off, were you doing this 7 days a week?
Yes. Yep. So originally I had planned that I would just do it Monday to Friday and have the weekends off. But I think I was just enjoying it so much and I really wanted to get it done that I thought I'll just do the weekends too. And I sort of thought as well, like, it was less than 3 months and I should focus on something. So I sort of felt that just do it.
Wow, you are really a great example of not waiting around for the muse to come. You just put your bum in that seat and you had a goal and you reached that goal. Okay, so you wrote it before Christmas, put it away, have Christmas. What was your approach then for your second draft?
Yeah, so for the second, during the first draft, well, I was writing certain chapters and right away, and I'd be like, oh, hang on, this is a really great idea and I want to add this in. And so I would add it into that scene, but I would also recognize that maybe I needed to thread it in earlier in the book. And so say, for example, I was writing chapter 20, wasn't in my original plan. I'd go back and look at the previous chapters very briefly and just look at the chapter titles and be like, oh, well, maybe I can add that into chapter 3 and chapter 13, and then it'll be reintroduced in chapter 20. So I'll go back to chapter 3 and 13, and just at the very top in a highlighted font, I would write one sentence of, you need to add this in. And I wouldn't bother going back to read those chapters and then figuring out where to add it in, writing it in nicely. And I think that's also why I wrote that first draft so quickly. And so when I went to write the second draft, most of my chapters had a few sentences at the top of them of things that needed to be added into those scenes. So that's what writing the second draft involved. But I had also printed off the first draft, read it with a highlighter and a red pen and marked it. So my second draft also involved taking anything that was written on that printed copy and put that into digital copy as well.
So you are an incredibly systematic, methodical person. That is very obvious, which makes me ask the question, why did you not plot the earlier efforts, your earliest attempts? Because it seems really contradictory to your personality.
I love that you say that because I'm actually inherently lazy and very much a procrastinator. And
that's different though.
Yeah, but this is what I did, I think, to combat that. So originally, I think I was wanting to be nice and creative and see where the words took me and the story took me. And I'm a little bit, I think, lazy, and I don't always want to necessarily dedicate myself to something. And so I think that's why I led towards that pantsing mode originally. But when that failed 3 times and just each story went flop, I thought, no, I'm going to do this. This planning business. I'd heard of several authors that I hold in high esteem had done very well with planning.
And was that what motivated you? Because after sort of 3 failed attempts, you can feel a bit depressed.
Yeah.
So was that what motivated you to keep going, hearing that it was possible with plotting?
Yes, yeah. And I really wanted to write a book. I just really wanted to do it. I wanted to be able to say I've written a book, and I just loved that idea. And so I knew, even though these stories were sort of like startling stories and weren't very good, and I was just going nowhere, I still always had this sort of burning desire to write a book, a full-length book. And so I was just sort of waiting for a good idea to strike me, and then I had decided that I would plot the next attempt.
I think that's utter rubbish that you're lazy, because clearly you're incredibly determined and hardworking. Anyway, as you know, we always end with what are your top 3 tips for aspiring writers who would love to see their books on bookshelves like you are seeing now with your book?
Yes. My first tip is to immerse yourself in the craft of writing. So realize it's a craft and that it can be learnt, and not to be discouraged by early attempts that aren't particularly good. My very early attempts of writing were appalling, and I'm looking back at them and just like, these are shocking. Should burn the laptop. And so I think realizing that even if things aren't great to begin with, that you can learn it, and you can enroll in online courses, you can listen to podcasts with lots of tips, and then to also really immerse yourself into it. So to make sure that you're, if you're going to do it, so try and I guess do it consistently and regularly so that you improve at a good pace. So that would be my first tip. My second tip would be to try and join the writing community. So obviously, if you live in a big city, you'll probably be able to join the local writer centre. But if you're living more regionally or rurally, then there's a great online writing community, and it's incredibly supportive. So I found that early on, or not early on, but it was probably 18 months ago or so that I discovered there was a really good writing community out there. And I just found that I jumped on Twitter, and this was after listening to a few podcasts with authors, and I just started following some authors that I liked, and then started following some debut authors as well, and see they follow. And I found that I felt that I was alone, because writing's such a solitary pursuit, and to know that there's other people who are at a similar stage to you is fantastic. And it's very encouraging to hear when other people are on their sort of posting their successes and their values, and it sort of just spurs you on a little bit. So that would be my second piece of advice. And then my third one would be to try and take yourself seriously as an author if you're wanting to get published. So if you're obviously just writing for yourself and for your own benefit and your own love of writing, then that's fine. But if you're aspiring to become published down the track, try and take yourself seriously as an author. So I decided last year, before I found out I was shortlisted for the Banjo, that I would sort of start trying to present myself as an author. So I looked at, I did some of the courses. I shot started. I'd already picked out what website company I was going to go with, so that when it came to actually approaching agents, publishers, I could direct them to the website. And I, things like I was being quite diligent with deadlines and setting myself word targets so that I would actually get things done. Because I figured I may as well, if I wanted to give writing a serious go, and I should give it as much effort as I would any other potential sort of career change. So if I was going to enroll in my master's at uni, I would probably spend an hour or two every night doing assignments, if not more. And why shouldn't I do that with writing if that's sort of the path that I'm hoping to go down?
Brilliant. And like I said, not lazy at all. Determined, systematic, methodical, and incredibly talented. Congratulations on the whispering. I'm so excited for you, and I can't wait to see where you're headed next. Thank you so much for your time today, Veronica.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.